Can Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman save Vince McMahon from the AEW versus WWE war? It's coming up next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's All Out. Now, Ralph, it seems as of late, as the temperature rises in North America due to summer, the war, I put this in air quotes, the war between AEW and WWE is starting to heat up. And WWE dropped a bombshell last week with the news that Paul Heyman will be the executive director of Monday Night Raw. Eric Bischoff will be the executive director of SmackDown.
Yep.
We also got the news that Evolve's 131 show will be on the WWE Network the same night as Fight for the Fallen. Extreme Rules will be happening the following night. So we're going to get our first glimpse of really an AEW versus WWE war.
Yep.
So do you think, I know a lot of people have been trashing the product of WWE right now, do you think Heyman and Bischoff are the answer?
Heyman and Bischoff certainly can change things for the better, all right? Because we know we've certainly seen what Eric Bischoff is capable of when he's put into a position where he is against competition. When he went against Vince McMahon, he's the only person to really, hit Vince McMahon in the face and drop him, for at least for a short time before Vince got back up and put him out of business. But for a very long, for what is it, like 83 weeks or whatever the ratings war was.
83 weeks.
Eric Bischoff was the one individual who went up against Vince McMahon and beat him in head-to-head competition. And I don't think there's anybody else who can say that, at least not for that long of a period of time. Paul Heyman, for all intensive purposes, and most people are going to probably agree with this, is a genius. I mean, even at the smallest level of ECW, there was always some type of genius you could see that with the way he was able to work with the talent, get the talent over. When you look at some of the guys that really made it in the WWE or even in WCW for that matter, most of them made their way through the work of Paul Heyman and ECW. ECW was essentially like I guess you can call it like a feeder for those larger promotions, but a good majority of those wrestlers came through that in that company with Paul Heyman.
Right.
What Paul Heyman's big downside was obviously he made some bad business moves and he wasn't a very good businessman. And there's a great documentary, obviously, on the WWE Network that you can watch. I think it's called The Rise and Fall of ECW, where they'll detail all of that. But Paul Heyman, for all intensive purposes, whether he's on the mic or he's working with people backstage, he knows what he's got going on. Now, all that being said, despite the genius of Paul Heyman and despite whatever Eric Bischoff may have left in the tank, it comes down to one man, because there's still one man overseeing all of the product who is ultimately going to have the final decision making, and that's Vince McMahon. The key is Paul Heyman, are Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff going to be able to convince Vince McMahon to make the appropriate changes to save his product? And I say save in the sense that not from AEW, not some from outside source, from internal explosion, because whether it's disgruntled employees, whether it's slipping ratings, whether it's stale product, there's more than enough things that you can point to on WWE product right now that you can say is wrong with it.
Right.
Is he going to allow them the freedom to make the changes they see necessary to really, truly change the product for the better?
Well, I know a lot of people are skeptic of this announcement, saying that Vince is still going to be in his ways because he's the one having the final say, and these are more titles than anything. I remember earlier this year when Bruce Pritchard was hired, and I thought that was a terrific move because it seems like only one person was able to change the mind of Vince McMahon creatively, and that was Bruce Pritchard. And it seems like, I don't know if he just hasn't had any say in the matter, or Vince is just so stubborn in his ways. It just it hasn't changed much since Pritchard's got there.
Right.
You could say the same thing could happen again with Heyman and Bischoff. But here's how I look at this move. Obviously, Monday Night Raw creatively is lacking. If you had to pick one of the two, which one was lacking in creativity, it's Monday Night Raw. They have the talent, just the booking is bad. SmackDown has been the better show for a year and a half,
I agree.
Some
Yeah,
people would
definitely.
argue. I know the last couple weeks haven't been that great, and Raw has arguably been better. But Eric Bischoff, I think that move was not meant for a creative move. That was a move because this is a guy who has experience dealing with TV executives at TBS, at TNT, at Spike TV. He knows how to deal with TV executives. And when they make this move to Fox, Fox is going to have a lot of demands, and Eric Bischoff is going to be the guy, the liaison of WWE to basically talk to these guys as if in TV layman's terms, not wrestling terms, which I think is going to be a huge, huge part of how they succeed on Fox. They need someone like Eric Bischoff that can transition from big television and wrestling and go back and forth with that. I think that's where that move is. Heyman, on the other hand, we all know he's a creative genius. We know he's been doing work with people's promos in the back and working with a little bit of booking in some capacity. We all know what he could do with Brock Lesnar. So he always has his hands in Brock Lesnar's storylines. So we know there's something there. The question is, how much leeway will Vince give them?
Well, another thing you got to consider is this. Everybody knows that a good leader is really able to boost the morale of the people around him. Paul Heyman, for all intensive purposes, has been compared to like a used car salesman, but he cares about the product, and you can see that anytime he cuts a promo or when he does some type of Q&A session, you can tell he cares about the product. Right. And I think that is something that can really translate in terms of the younger wrestlers who maybe could be getting disgruntled backstage with their position in the company or their storylines and their promos and things like that, where Paul Heyman can come in and kind of explain why these things are important.
Right. I'm glad you brought up his Q&As because this afternoon, Monday afternoon, when we're recording this, Inside the Ropes released part of a Q&A that Heyman did. I think this was a year or so ago. And he brought up the GM role. Right. And the GM's being played out. And I think a lot of people are questioning whether or not this is going to be an on-screen thing. And I myself, I'm questioning it too, because with Heyman's involvement with Brock Lesnar on screen, how would this get tied in, if at all, in the storyline? He says that, authoritative roles, GM figures, they're played out. Over the weekend, a similar Q&A by Inside the Ropes was released by Eric Bischoff, where he was saying how the two brands need to be different in order for this brand split to work. So I think those two, having that be out on the internet and their thoughts known, I would hope Vince McMahon listens to just those two things alone to help WWE, because yes, they do have to be different. I understand the wild card rule, and to some aspects it can work. But the way they're executing it right now, it's not entirely working because you're stifling guys in the mid card. Some guys aren't even getting TV time, and we're just seeing the same guys being used over and over and over again on both shows. Yeah. That's not what we want. But I think this is a huge move in this so-called war between AEW and WWE. Obviously, to me, AEW and WWE right now, they are two completely different companies and two different approaches to their company. Yeah. WWE, we know they're family friendly. We know they're a more safer style. We know they focus more on entertainment over wrestling, and the other thing too is WWE believes that, or at least the way it's focused on TV, is the brand is first, everybody else is underneath the brand. AEW, on the other hand, they're targeting wrestling fans. They're targeting an older demo. They're might be a little riskier. We know the chair shot that happened on Firefest. They're focusing on wrestling over entertainment. They're diversifying their audiences. They want to target gamers. They want to target the lapsed Attitude Era fans, even mixed martial arts fans with the whole wins and loss matter thing. So I think Heyman and Bischoff can help counteract the approaches that AEW are doing, because one, the way that Nitro succeeded was Eric Bischoff went, okay, what's WWE doing? I'll do the opposite. Yeah. So he knows, he's basically using him as a way to, okay, if AEW does this, how would you counteract?
Well, that's also kind of what AEW is doing to a certain extent, because the one thing they said is, from some of the higher ups that have given interviews and stuff, they've said, we're not going to focus on what WWE is doing. We're just going to do what we're really good at. So they're focusing on what is going to make them successful and what's going to set them apart, and not so much, well, this is what WWE is doing, so we're going to do this, or we're not going to
Right.
do this. It's not trying to recreate what WWE is, which I think if you listen to certain podcasts and interviews as well, a lot of people think that that was part of the downfall. Oh, well, the decline, I guess you could call it, of TNA or Impact Wrestling to a certain
Mhm.
extent too.
Right.
So,
Right. Now, let's focus on what's happening next weekend. This is our first real test to really compare the two while they're close to each other because we have Extreme Rules happening on July 14th. We have Fight for the Fallen happening the night before. So, whether it's coincidence or not, that's up to the person, that's up to the individual. But this is going to be the first real taste of a so-called war because people are going to compare Fight for the Fallen to Extreme Rules, whether it's fair or unfair, because Fight for the Fallen's free, Extreme Rules is a pay-per-view, and one's a charity event, one is just their monthly show. Maybe it's fair, maybe it's unfair, but the comparisons are coming.
yeah.
So, Fight for the Fallen, you look at their card right now, there's some decent matches in there. Omega versus Shima.
Yep. That'll be good.
Hangman Page versus Kip Sabian. You have Ali versus Brandy Rhodes. You have the Rhodes brothers versus the Young Bucks. So they're definitely throwing their matches in there. WWE with Extreme Rules right now. You have The Undertaker and Roman Reigns versus Shane and Drew McIntyre. Some people don't like that. I'm actually okay with this match. Totally
Yeah.
fine with it because here's what happens. Here's what I think is going to happen and should happen. Drew McIntyre should pin The Undertaker. That gives him a rub, beating a legend in WWE. Then Shane McMahon can say, hey, I beat Roman Reigns again, even though they were not involved in the pinfall or whatever. This follows up at SummerSlam where Drew McIntyre and The Undertaker have a match, maybe even a retirement match. Shane McMahon and Roman Reigns have their payoff in Hell in a Cell. Because if you check the pay-per-view calendar, there's no Hell in a Cell pay-per-view right now.
Yeah.
So you actually can have a Hell in a Cell match and not be, see them again 2 months later. I think that's a great move, and I think this helps that storyline. Will it be a great match? Given that you have Shane McMahon in there and an aging Undertaker, maybe not, but it furthers the storyline. So,
Sure.
What do you think of this whole thing being on the same weekend? Do you think it's really a first taste of the war?
I definitely think it's a way for Vince McMahon. It's Vince McMahon reacting to what AEW is doing. I definitely think that. I think he wants to see how his guys, even if it's not WWE top guys, do in comparison to what AEW does. Well, first and foremost, I don't think this is going to work, right? Because if you have the WWE network, I imagine this is going to be a rerun. So if you want to watch AEW and then you want to watch this later on at night or the next day, you can certainly do that.
You're talking about the Evolve show?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
So, I mean, those two going kind of head to head in slight competition against one another. I definitely think it's a reaction from Vince McMahon, based on the success that AEW has had to this point.
Now, granted, this is the 10th anniversary show for Evolve, and it was probably booked way before Fight for the Fallen was booked and before Extreme Rules was booked. It's just that putting it on the network, this is the first time Evolve has ever been on the WWE network. So that's where it seems kind of reactionary or
absolutely
a play on Vince McMahon in this.
And it's a business move for Vince. I know, and even Kenny Omega went on to Twitter because he was upset because he was calling it blood money and stuff like that. And
right.
I get it. I understand why people would be upset, but at the end of the day, if you're Vince McMahon, you're going to protect your investment and you're going to protect your business. So, I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I understand why he's doing it.
Yes. I mean, like you said, if you have the WWE network, you could just watch the Evolve show afterwards. And even with Bleacher Report Live, it's a free event.
Right.
If you have Bleacher Report Live. So technically you could do the same thing. And that's in the United States only, and I believe Canada as well. I know overseas it's a completely different situation where you got to pay for it on the Fight TV app or whatever. But this is going to be a fun weekend coming up, and I think we'll see how WWE books the next 2 weeks going into Extreme Rules to see if people are going to be interested. Now, the other thing you got to take into consideration is Extreme Rules is in Philadelphia, a huge, huge, huge wrestling city. And you know that crowd's going to, they're going to fill out the Wells Fargo Arena. And you know that if they don't like what they see, they're going to let you know. So the crowd is going to tell the story with this. Now, Fight for the Fallen, we already mentioned tickets are still available for that show. We did an episode a couple months back that tickets weren't selling. But again, that's in Jacksonville, Florida. And it is a charity event. And some of the tickets might be a little expensive. But, that's something to also compare is the crowd size. If they're not going to be able to sell out Jacksonville, what makes you think they're going to sell out any other arena? But we know they could sell out Chicago. We know they could sell out Las Vegas.
Yeah, all
bigger
that,
cities.
The thing, and again, we keep talking about this. The thing that is really going to be the true testament when this whole war, if there is even going to be a war, is where it's going to heat up, is going to be once AEW goes to TV.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to determine everything. If it's going to be a success, if it's going to flop, if there's growing pains, all of that stuff. Everything's going to change once they get TV. And then that's going to be the point at which I think Vince McMahon is going to have to decide, okay, is this legitimate competition for us? Is this going to affect us? Is it going to be them taking fans away from our product? Because if he feels a threat, I mean, if he's got any sense of the old Vince McMahon that was there during the Attitude Era, and even if he doesn't, I can't imagine Triple H being in the position that he's in within that company and being the competitive guy that he is, just sitting back and allowing another company to come in and kind of beat them.
Right.
Because they've been taking subtle jabs at WWE for the last month and a half here and there, whether it was the throne breaking thing with Cody, the subtle things on being the elite that they've been doing, the thing that they did, the Young Bucks did with the Shield and, mocking with Moxley in the back. So little things here and there, and Triple H certainly has given it back.
Firefly Funhouse, a lot of people could say were jabs at AEW, especially the one segment where Bray Wyatt killed Ramblin' Rabbit.
Yeah.
Basically, he was saying, he's going to reveal all these secrets, and the makeup Bray Wyatt was having on his face was similar to Jericho's. So it was that whole John Moxley interview of the Talk is Jericho. So they're definitely throwing jabs at each other. So obviously they know what each other's doing, and they should. But I think this whole war thing is more the fans bringing it up than WWE or AEW.
Right now. I think it's more amongst the fans. But again, once it goes to TV, I think everything changes.
Yes, it does. So let us know what you think of the whole situation. Can Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman save Vince McMahon and WWE? And what do you think about next weekend? Which show is going to be better? Extreme Rules, Evolve 131, or the Fight for the Fallen by AEW? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, share it all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. Subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. We're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's all out. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.